Welcome back to Electripreneur Secrets, the Electrician's Podcast. Me and Joe, we're here with you 5 days a week to help you master sales, simplify pricing, and deliver premium level service. I promise you guys there's a test on that later. I'm going to ask you what we say every show. If we get on a call, I'm going to ask you that. So if you're ready to recite that back to me and you're the first person to do it and nail it 100%, I am straight up going to give you an applause, and I don't have a prize in mind yet. Is it cash?
We'll keep
Joe?
one in
Should I
mind.
give cash?
We will have something worth giving.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a value piece like none other, worth millions of dollars. There we go. Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, man. I feel like we've got a really, really cool podcast topic that I'm just itching to just chew at. But honestly, things are going good on our end. What about you?
Yeah, I'm feeling good, man. You know what? We had a rough boat ride on the weekend. The wind really picked up. Then we went and stayed at the in-laws on the island nearby. It's like just about 2 hours on a ferry, though. And even these massive ferries with a few thousand people on them were just doing the wave, right? Up and down the whole time. Like walking down the ferry deck was a problem.
Really?
Yeah. So still, even right now, as I look at you through this screen, the whole room is moving. You ever get that from being on a boat too much?
The thing is, I actually like having sea legs.
Okay.
I don't know why, but every time I've ever been on the water, I've almost preferred it to being on dry land.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's weird. Like I've spent time on the water. Like we've gone on extensive ship trips and things like that, but I really prefer the rocking of the water. I've actually never slept better than when I'm sleeping with the room moving you it's almost like that hammock mentality. It's just great.
Interesting. And honestly, a perfect tie-in with our topic of the day, which is really what can we learn from the Titanic for our electrical biz? And there's a few things. I know there's what you wanted to touch on, and I've actually got a surprise for you as well, because there's a couple other things in front of that, like going back in time even to what happened with the Titanic, what happens on that maiden voyage. And even now coming forward to recent events, and I hope this isn't too soon or insensitive for anyone, it's just the facts are the facts, and some things came forward that made that a fairly unsafe voyage. In our businesses, a lot of times we tend to be a little risk tolerant. We tend to do a little less of the management of this project of launching a business and a little more of just jumping right in, getting excited and doing things that aren't always well-founded with good factual evidence. Does that make sense? And have you ever seen that before, Joe?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, isn't that just humanity's MO at a certain point? I want to do it. I want to do it now. I've got the money to do it. Fuck it, I'm doing it.
Right.
Like that's really what a lot of it comes down to. And unfortunately, some people in business can get in the same thing where they start actually making money and the rules start changing. And we have to realize that's the whole point of what I want to talk about today.
Perfect.
Is the rules need to stay lined up. We can't forget where we came from and where we're trying to go.
That why is so important.
That's where we're at. So do you mind if I jump into it?
Yeah, kick it off.
All right. So once again, blanket statement. We are not intending on being insensitive, but at the same time, there are two very different sides to this situation that's happened. The facts are people went down to see the Titanic. A lot of the questions came up as to why they were there and things like that. Unfortunately, they all passed away. On one side of the argument, you have someone saying, regardless, loss of life, never good. We don't like it. On the other side, you have people pretty much laughing that a bunch of people went down in a souped up propane tank, 12,000 feet under the water. And it's like, okay, well, that's what happens. But there is one consistent thing that happens from both sides that we want to talk about today. The overall cost to go down there was 3 hours for $250,000. And almost every single person that I've ever heard mention that figure has always said how they would spend that money differently. Now, it's a very interesting thing because for most people in our own circles as well, think of the richest person you know, like personally know. If you were to give them $250,000, what would they do with it? Some people say, oh, I would give it to charity. Others say I'd pay off my mortgage. I'd pay off these things. But that's the problem. We're thinking about spending someone else's money in a way that wouldn't necessarily apply to their direct situation.
And before you take us off of that, let me just engage with our current live viewers. If you're with
Mhm.
us in the VIP and the Electrepreneur Facebook community group, let us know, how would you spend the $250,000? Was this
Mhm.
something that was on your bucket list? What would you have done differently before we taper away from that? All right, Joe,
Mhm. No
I'll tag you
worries.
back in on that one.
No, it's all good. And I have to admit, as much as I'd consider myself to be a decent person, I'm not spending $250,000 on charity. Like that wouldn't be the thing that came to mind. There are expenses to take care of. There's ways to improve the lives of your family. There's investments to be made. Like that's usually the first thought of someone who's in upper to middle class. You start thinking of what we can do. As you go further down the scale, it's I need to take care of this. I need to get out of debt. Regardless, the person is solving a need based on their particular means of solving it. So there's two things we need to discuss. One, it touches why people offer options. And the second thing that we're going to learn here is that we can't lose sight of our why. Because let me ask you guys this. Let's say, sake of argument, I handed you $250,000. You had it in your hand, clean check, not even check, it's cash. You have it, it's in hand,
I'm feeling the weight.
right?
I'm there. Okay.
Now, a lot of us were saying they should have donated it to charity, but how many of us, given the same circumstance, would have donated it to charity? Sure, we wouldn't have taken a 3-hour, submarine trip, but would we have donated it like we're accusing others of doing so? What are the odds?
Well, pretty much nil unless you planned on that.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I mean, that's what I'm always going to come back to is, what's the plan?
And that's the important part. So when we all started out, there was actually a line item for refunds. Things you actually taught me this yourself. And I feel like it was such a great lesson to remember. If tithing is important to you, it should be done with intention and it should be done with purpose and it should be done within your means. You literally could say, I have X dollars I want to donate from my business to a cause that I truly believe in and do it. But if we look at everyone's numbers, why is it that it's so consistently zero? Any
There's
idea,
no
Clay?
plan for it. Just like there was an inadequate plan for the maiden voyage, inadequate safety inspections, inadequate adherence to safety laws and regulations,
Mm-hmm.
inadequacy in every position we could see around this event, both events, both
Mm-hmm.
times, right? It's not even just the question of money, it's also the question of project management. Are we doing our diligence? And
Mm-hmm.
the answer is no. As it relates to your question, though, if you don't plan for that, and by the way, just like we're talking about lessons from this thing, things do go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
For your business out there, you're listening right now, things are going to go wrong for you a time or two, right? Like it's going to happen. And likely it's a time or two per year. For some, it might be a time or two per quarter. If you don't have that built into your burdens, if you don't have a certain amount of losses set aside, if you don't have
Mm-hmm.
any of the refunds, which are just under your sales revenue, refunds, there should be a number there. That's not
Mm-hmm.
shameful to have that and plan for it. It's smart. Because as they say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him you have a plan.
Mm-hmm. And God, will he laugh because it happens way too often, right? When we think about how often do people literally say, oh, I'm expecting to have a 10% loss in revenue this year? Like you would never expect that unless your numbers were so on point that you could sit down and get to it. So the very first thing was to say, a lot of us who are trying to judge and say you should have spent it on charity, look inward as well. How much are you spending on charity within your means? There was a story that I was taught, and I'm going to keep any kind of religious connotation out of it. So I'm going to speak it as best I can. There was an individual surrounded by people who were following him. And this person was standing around and watching donations being put into a big coffer, right? And kings and sultans and everyone were showing and throwing huge vats and pots of gold into it. And a little old woman showed up and put a quarter of a penny in. And that person was praised. The person was praised not because of the amount that they were putting in, but because they gave when they had very little. And they chose to give the best of what they could with what they have. Very few of us entrepreneurs are in a position where we could shell out thousands, hundreds, millions to causes that we believe in. But the question I have for you is, which are you? Are you only the kind of person that will give when you're sitting upon vast piles of gold? Or are you the kind of person that's willing to give back to an industry or to a cause you believe in, even when you have little to give? What has more honor in?
Yeah, I think it always comes back to that start with why. And the
Mm-hmm.
reality is with many of the entrepreneurs we speak to each and every day, most people have some semblance of a why. There's a reason they got into
Mm-hmm.
business. There's a reason they got into electrical, period. There's a reason they're striving to do better. Like if you're listening to us, clearly you're someone who's looking to grow. You're looking to do
Mm-hmm.
better, be better than you were yesterday, be better again than you are today,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's an indication of something. It's an indication that there's a why in the background. And if that why is big enough, you will succeed.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have to join Joe here and just challenge you to pull out that mirror and really look at. I know how heavy mirrors are. Don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but really look at, do I have a plan in action along with that why to make sure that I can enact it?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people stop at the dream. They don't lay out the goals to get to that dream. Does that make sense, Joe?
Oh my God, yes. Because I'm sure other people are putting up their hand and saying, like, that's me.
Mm-hmm.
I've always found that when you have a goal, reverse engineering is the way to do it. I have a goal. What's it going to look like when I'm there? Okay, well, how do I have to be that person? Okay, well, how do I get to be that person? How do I get to that? And you keep going backwards until eventually I just say, okay, 2 steps forward. Check mark A, done. Always strive to grow, both personally and professionally, because that personal growth, no one takes away. People can
Yeah.
chop your business away, but that personal growth stays.
And I feel like there's a couple ounces of this, both with the Titanic and the submarine, linking back to our theme here today,
Mm-hmm.
of really stretching for that dream, really
Mm-hmm.
pushing that vision. So it becomes like this irresistible gravity from all people. It
Mm-hmm.
becomes popular, but it was also too big of a step too soon.
Mm-hmm.
And people do this in business all the time. And that's why 80% are failing, right? Generally
Yep.
speaking, if we don't have that plan in place, if we don't have a proven procedure, if we don't have a little guidance and you haven't done it before, how do you expect to just get it right with this big stretchy goal? And a perfect parallel to
Mm-hmm.
this is like pool. You ever play pool? You a pool
Yeah.
shark, Joe?
Not a shark, but I love billiards.
Okay. I've done a little myself. Here's the thing. I'm like
Mm-hmm.
dangerous at pool to myself because I know enough to think a play forward strategy. And that's what we're getting into here. You ever plan 2 or 3 shots ahead and then miss the first shot?
Yep.
Doesn't that suck? You
Yeah, it's
invest
even worse when
all
you
of this
scratch at it.
energy thinking about, oh, how good it's going to be to reach that level. But then you trip on the speed bump right in front of you.
Exactly.
It's kind of a perfect metaphor for this, isn't it?
I really agree. I was going to say, so many people think as they're trying to do this, they don't realize that doing that is what's actually going to cause them to trip.
And here's a recent example from the electrical world,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just recently, we had a chat with an individual who's looking at rebranding and was kind of doing a this versus that with specifically electrical or home services because one day we want to have this division too.
Mm-hmm.
That's a perfect example of playing it too far forward and missing the
Mm-hmm.
first shot because all of a sudden the people who reach out to you aren't entirely clear on what it is you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like how problematic would it be to start getting HVAC or plumbing calls when you're not getting enough electrical calls?
Yeah. I mean, I get that. A lot of times, some people used to call us from the utility company thinking that we worked for the utility. So sometimes the brand is really, really important to have.
Or that you're related to Tom Brady in your case.
Yeah, I was gonna say that happened. I did always appreciate when they won the Super Bowl because then there was always some brand recognition. But neither here nor there.
Neither
There
here
was
nor there.
actually there was actually one other situation and one other lesson that I wanted to talk about that we can learn from this. Is it okay if I jump into that?
Mm-hmm.
So the second fact is, if the first was people saying, well, why didn't you donate to charity? I want to speak to the other side of it and say they didn't have to. But the thing was, how many of us can understand the amount of wealth that is required to say, I'm going to spend $250,000 on a 3-hour event? That amount of money exists. And for a lot of us, we tend to believe that it is someone else, some sultan, some person, some authority figure that is not someone that we would normally interact with. The problem is that when you maintain that belief that not everyone has a certain amount of money, or that if they do, they have to look a certain way, you'll often limit the amount of options you're willing to offer that kind of person. You'll offer what you believe is within their means to avoid you getting checked when they say, that's ridiculous. There's no way I can swing that. The thing to remember is that you don't know. The person who's driving an 85 Camaro, but turns out to also be wearing plaid shorts that he's worn for the past 18 years, could be having $6 million in an account and just lives frugally.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. So the thing is that no matter what happens, you can plan to meet someone who has all of their financial future secured, but doesn't look the part. And you would never know what's available and what you could have offered if you don't offer it. So, my advice for this situation, in addition to offering tithes, in addition to offering your line item charities, is to say, never judge anyone to an extent where you say they can't afford this. I'm certain they can't have it because there's no way you know. There is no possible way you would know. And what's the real disservice? To be the person who never actually shows up, to be the person that won't offer it, and you're the one that they're going to have to say, he never offered it. I had to get the best of what they offered. I feel like that would be the truest disservice you could ever be as a premium service provider.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I'm a fan of VIP offers. I think let's forget electrical for a moment. No, I'm going to retract that, Joe. Too many people are
Yeah, I was
forgetting
gonna say,
electrical.
I was like, a
That's not
hard
something we
pause.
do here. We don't forget electrical, but speak to, in a generalist nature, I'll speak to every service business right now for a moment. From chiropractors to dentists to doctors to electricians, plumbers, carpenters, anyone. What is the VIP offer?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not offering something that's out of reach, that puts a ton of new cash in your pocket, right? Creates new potential for your business. If you're not offering that, no one's going to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, somewhere around 10% of the time, you could sell those offers.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen chiropractic clinics incorporate a massage therapist and then sell a group package for $10,000 when everyone else is working 40, 50, 60 bucks an hour, 100 bucks an hour chiropractic appointments.
Wow.
Right? As an
Mm-hmm.
electrician, that's the equivalent of what we teach. Put 6 options out and build a platinum option that's almost out of reach for most,
Mm-hmm.
but stack it so much with value that maybe 1 in 10 see that and decide to swipe.
Can I touch on that for a moment?
Yeah, do it.
To give you guys perspective of what we're talking about here, can I give you like a scenario of what that reach might look like?
Wouldn't be mad if you did.
Okay. The typical sub pump call that you get, right? Every single person in the world knows that when your sub pump doesn't work, people need it. And for a lot of us, it could be a situation where the line is down or the breaker tripped or the GFI tripped. Now, also, all of us agree that that should have some sort of backup. So you have your UPSs, your uninterruptible power sources. Some people say, you know what, I'm going to put a portable interlock in. Some say I'm going to include the generator with it. But would it not be the finest level of service to say, for this option, I'm including an automatic standby backup system? That way, when you leave, because I know that you like to take trips, you'll never have to worry about it. So much so that I'm installing a built in outlet that can send you an email if you ever lost power. And we're going to have a UPS backing this up in addition to it in case the generator fails.
Whew.
Now you can take your trips and never have to worry about coming home to the basement flooding like I used to. That's an offer that no one would ever reasonably expect you to take. But because you found the emotional reason of why, you're able to offer it with good conscience. And newsflash for you, there's no possible way you could ever have sold it if you didn't offer it. So just in those circumstances, it applies.
And guess what? 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say, no, thanks. Not interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. I can't blame you.
What'd you lose?
But 1 in 10, even if it's 1 in 12, 1 in 15, isn't it worth selling that package?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it worth that extra effort, that extra work?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I just told someone on a call this morning, and you know how this happens, Joe. We speak a lot, right? We're here every day, we're talking. And as we're on these calls, as we're on these podcasts, sometimes we learn something. There's a new tweak of knowledge, a new perspective. And I recognized just this morning that in many ways we train for the no.
Mm-hmm.
We're training around that no. A no is like a buoy in the water. It lets us know where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
It lets us know what to do next, what the response is. Does that make sense?
It actually really does. Because for some people, they might be like, the buoy. No, the buoy's not the no, but it actually is, because you only have two outcomes in life. Either I'm winning or I'm learning how to win. I'll take a no and then say, there's things like, okay, I really appreciate you letting me know that. You know how hard it is sometimes to get people to tell me no? If you don't mind me asking, what have I done to make you feel so comfortable that you're willing to be honest with me?
Yeah,
Wouldn't that be worth finding out?
definitely. And I'll stretch it a step further. Training for the no. I mean, what happens after we get to 85% conversions consistently? Then what?
Realistically, you never want to be over that percentage. Like, I want to have a hard cut at 80%. If you're closing more than 80% of your jobs, there is something wrong. Either that you're not putting your packages at enough of a premium, or your rates need to be increased. So by training for a no, not only can you often find a yes, but you'll know when to turn that valve up and down according to the season, time, and requirements.
100%. If you really think about that, once you exceed 80%, we're looking for no's again.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get it back down, and there's only a couple ways to do that. Maybe off topic, but I mean, this little rabbit hole I think is really powerful, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is when people train for yes, that's what intuition wants us to do. And when you train for yes, you become a yes man. You build options for yes. Your platinum's in reach all of a sudden. Everyone wants a platinum. And all you want is yeses. And your conversion rate goes 90, 95, 100%. No one says no to me. And that feels good because I'm protected.
Ego is in check. Yep.
Right? That's all anyone wants is yeses. Wouldn't training for no be a little more powerful than that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for 20% no's. If I don't actually achieve 20% no's, I'm doing something wrong. Okay, we got 40% no's. Well, that's too much. Let's tweak it a bit. Let's get our nose down. It's making sense, Joe.
I'm loving this. And I love the fact that you're carrying it in a way that just makes a lot of sense. And I really do appreciate that you always bring a different level of perspective. We can bounce ideas off each other.
Very important stuff. Okay, Titanic stuff.
Great.
Did we get it all out? Is there anything left to relate to the Titanic here in this episode?
I mean, other than Titanic 2, Rich People 0, I mean, like at a certain point, we've done everything we can.
Yeah, definitely. There are, let me try, I'll reach for one more. There's definitely icebergs out there.
Ooh.
right?
Okay.
There are
That
things
works.
that are going to get in our way. They're going to challenge us. I think that's a big reason why a lot of our clients, it's not just the process that they come for, it's the support along
Mm-hmm.
the way. In fact, we've realized through our trainings that typically we average about 2 to 3 problems solved before we truly have that breakthrough in a relationship with a client. Have you noticed that as well? There's always
I
a
have.
couple challenges along the way, but after we get around those icebergs,
Mm-hmm.
that's really what develops the trust. And people tend to really get devoted at that point and realize, okay, I'm protected here. I'm safe here. People can
You
help
know,
me through this.
I have a very specific situation that could help with this.
All right, let's hit it. We
All
got
right.
about 5 minutes left here.
All right. I'll make it quick. So I remember I went to a call once where the customer, she was just giving me nothing. Like, you know, where you're talking about, like, this was a clear iceberg situation. Not happy, not enthusiastic, getting almost no commitments across the call. And what ended up happening was we're talking, we're trying to bond. I'm reaching for anything that this person's going to give me. Ended up getting nothing. We go into a room and you can tell she stomps and she just looks and she gets like this sense of visible sadness. It's very change in the demeanor
Mm,
because previously she was pissed, now she's sad. And I was like, I was like, hey, if you don't let me asking, just pause here. Is there anything that changed? Is there anything particular about this room that you feel is why we need to get this work done? And she paused and she's like, well, unfortunately, my son actually passed away from an overdose, and this was his room. And I always keep the light on, and the light doesn't work now, and I want it back on. And
ouch.
the fact was, she was so upset because I thought she was just being rude. She was upset because she wanted to pay homage to her son who had passed away and always keep the light on for him. And because the circuit had issues, the light wasn't working.
Mm,
And when we broached that particular connection, the why met the how. It really did. It was along the lines of, I'm sorry you're in that situation, but I know that your family was lucky to have someone like you to keep that memory alive throughout the years. And she broke down and ended up giving us the job, but from a place of not pushing, but just because we were willing to step back and say, I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to look back. So I
yeah.
felt like that was relevant to the situation.
No, I love that. Now I want to relate to that in the few moments we have and just say, if you recall, not long ago, we had a call with one of our clients where they brought up this conflict of a father had passed away and they
Mm-hmm.
had helped wire this home, but
Mm.
it wasn't meeting code. There were safety violations. And that whole thing about trying to breach through that emotional value to get to bringing safety up, bringing it to code, and
Mm-hmm.
still contributing to the memory of that father in that home.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really grave situation as well. No pun intended.
Yeah, I was
Ouch.
gonna say, did you intend on saying the word grave
Ouch.
on that
No,
one?
no, that was bad. If you're laughing, I'm sorry. If you're not, I'm sorry anyways. Ouch. That was a bad one. So, anyway, relating to that, working around those icebergs. But yeah, it tends to be a couple problems. Once we solve that, we really do develop long standing, full trusting relationships. So,
Mhm.
Joe, what can we do for action items on this one to help people with the few takeaways we've had? And would you
So
like the action or the all star?
I'll take either one, but I could think of one off the top of my head. So let me take the first crack.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So for the action, it sounds silly, but it goes back to what we originally started talking about, which was where you had two sides both talking about the same thing, but they had two different reasons to be there. One was saying you never should have gone down. It's a ridiculous waste of money. The other way is saying it's so bad that you guys ended up passing away, but they're both saying the amount of money spent was ridiculous. Instead, my first action assignment is to say, you don't get to control or choose how someone spends their money, not on their leisure and not in their options. That's why we offer six. We offer the ranges from the finest money can buy to the most band aid, Frankenfix cobbled thing I can come up with. They're going to see the full spread. And no matter what house they're in, no matter what car they drive, no matter what they're wearing, you should never judge whichever level they choose to purchase. At the bare minimum, it's not being in a place of judgment. Would that be fair?
100%. And I'm just going to stack on the options then and really put emphasis on this platinum, this VIP offer. And to just wrap your head around and allow yourself to experience this, I really want you to craft an offer. Just think about platinum for a second. Utilize the situation Joe mentioned earlier with the sump pump. Think about that. What else could you add to that? I mean, build something outlandish for a minute. Then I want to challenge you to take that outlandish offer and try to match the value to it by increasing warranties, by offering club memberships, by giving all the reasons why that's going to save them the inconvenience of time or effort and sacrifice, or by the ways it's going to improve the quality of their life. Really spend some time on this VIP offer piece, because if you're offering that and you get this to a point where 1 in 10 take it, wow, you're running a different business now. And not only are the people in your company going to be looking at you like, whoa, how are we even doing this? But the ones outside your company are going to be definitely fiending for a bit of knowledge of what's happening inside there. It's an incredible thing. Okay, then. Joe, this has been another episode of Electricpreneur Secrets. I cannot wait to see you guys again tomorrow as we help you master sales, simplify pricing, and deliver premium level electrical service. Have a great day, you guys.
Take care, all.